everybody, welcome to another episode of Punching Up with Sean Conroy. I am Sean Conroy, and today I am punching up with Marcus Perkins Bejarano, who has had quite a journey. What's it like when you start as a lawyer, get into writing musical theater, and then decide to become a television writer? We're going to find that out today. Marcus just finished a season writing on a television program called Hollywood Arts, which is a spinoff. Of course, everybody knows this. It's a spinoff of another Nickelodeon show called Victorious, which I don't know a ton about, but I know that Ariana Grande was on there. So it definitely has a background. So, Marcus, I guess what I'd like to do is start by having you tell me, first of all, welcome. How are you doing? I'm sorry.
I'm doing great. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Excited to be here.
Were you thinking that I
Thanks
was
for
just
the
going to talk
intro.
for like 20 minutes?
You're doing great. I was ready to let you just go on as long as you wanted.
Yeah,
You were doing
yeah.
awesome.
Thank you. So Marcus, just can you just tell me a little about your background, where you're from, and what got you into what you were doing before you got into what you're doing now?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was originally from Dallas, Texas. And kind of growing up in Dallas, I think early on I was kind of the type of kid who like didn't necessarily know exactly where I fit in, like amongst my peers. Like I didn't necessarily know what was cool. If I showed up, and if I lost my glasses, like I would show up in school wearing these industrial grade sports goggles, these like rec specs,
I
and
had
so like I had
those. I
no.
had those.
Not the move whenever you're in fifth grade. I
Mm,
definitely was a dork. Like I definitely fit that definition. That's where I comfortably slotted in. But
right.
I remember for the first time that I ever kind of wrote a sketch for like a school project. It was in fifth grade, and for whatever reason, I thought I could make people laugh, and like it worked out. And I just remember like being like, oh, I'm gonna chase this feeling. Like this is so fun. And so I was trying to kind of find the next way. Like how can I make people laugh? And I wound up finding this really sort of unique niche, which was writing comedy songs, and specifically, it was actually comedy raps. And so this kind of became like my like unique, quirky thing that I actually felt like I was good at and people really enjoyed. And
Hmm.
so like I won my high school talent show doing a rap. I rapped in my high school graduation speech. Law school musicals. Like I would write these really sort of specific raps about our grading system that no one else but like people at our law school would like.
Oh, so this
And
this persisted all the way through law school. You were still
yeah,
doing the same thing.
even at my law firm, because I did started doing commercial real estate law, and I would write
Marcus,
raps.
you're gonna make partner, but you need to up your rap game.
That's right. That's right. They made me drop an EP every quarter. But yeah, I was even doing raps that we would show to recruits to like help recruit people to the law
Oh
firm. I
my
rapped at
God.
eight different friends' weddings. It like sort of it was kind of this thing. And I was this entire time I was doing it just because it was fun. I like doing it. I like making people laugh and just sort of I enjoyed the writing process.
Right.
And it wasn't honestly until the musical Hamilton came out that like, and that really changed everything
Speaking
because
of speaking of rap music.
exactly,
Hmm.
exactly. It was like, oh, it sort of kind of something clicked for me. I was like, oh, this is what I'm doing, and all these songs that I'm performing, I'm telling stories, and they're really specific stories. But I was like, this is what I think I want to do, and so my girlfriend at the time, now wife, Laurel, was. She was like really supportive. I was like, hey, like I kind of want to go apply to this program and NYU doing musical theater. And she was like, "Yeah, I believe in you. Like, let's do this." And so, I quit my job. I'd been practicing for 5 years. I was on partnership track. Quit. We got engaged, got married, moved to New York. This was all over the span of like literally 3 months.
Honey, I don't
Um,
mean to sound like a worm, but I think I might have to quit the firm.
That's right. Me
So she was
breaking bad
supportive of
news
this. Like, I can't
in hip
imagine
hop.
somebody being like, "Oh, you're not going to be a lawyer anymore. You're going to be a
Yeah.
musical theaterist."
The funny
That's
thing,
great.
yeah, the funny thing is at one point she was like, look, she's like, she believed in me so much. this is before even the musical theater stuff. She's like, if you want to like quit your job for like a year and just go try to be like a rapper, to be like Lil Dicky or like
Hmm.
something along those lines. She's like, I support you fully to do that. And I was like, I just don't have that much stuff that I want to stay. And it
Right.
wasn't until I realized like, oh, like I want to tell stories. And that was specifically the avenue that I wanted to go in.
Right.
And that is sort of kind of what gave me like the impetus to really go chase this dream. And she was kind of already on board. I even, we got engaged with like a proposal rap. Like we invited all my friends. So it's like this is a constant theme, this very specific thing. And so moved to New York. Did this program, great program, and
NYU?
at NYU, yeah, the Graduate Musical Theater Writing Program, and found a collaborator there that I really like writing musicals and telling stories with, and he's fantastic. His name is Kim Jin Young, and yeah, and so it was sort of that was sort of the sole focus of my storytelling, and then the pandemic happened.
Sorry,
Um,
how long was that program?
Program was 2 years. It was a 2 year
Uh-huh.
MFA. And kind of the first year, you're learning all the basics of songwriting. You're writing with a bunch of different people. It is really great at teaching you how to collaborate as well. As a like went in as they call it a words person, so a lyricist and a book writer, and then you're working with all
That's
this.
the inside jargon. You're a words person or a music person.
I mean, in that specific program, that was the jargon that they use. Yes.
I'm a dance person myself, so
Right. And so, but like I wound up working with 18 different, composers over the course of that year. So it really teaches you like how to communicate, how to collaborate. And then your second year, you work on an actual thesis musical. And so that was that program. And yeah, and so that was mostly what I focused on doing was writing musicals and telling stories that way. And then the pandemic happened, theater, like live theater stopped. And I sort of had this feeling, I was like, well, okay, if theater doesn't come back, who knows how long it's going to take to come back? How can I use some of these skill sets that I picked up during this MFA program and apply it to a different field? And I sort of on a whim took a pilot writing class at UCB and sort of wrote my first pilot on my own and wound up loving it.
how did you
Um,
get to UCB? I'm just curious.
yeah, I think I probably just looked up TV pilot writing courses. I saw that
Uh-huh.
UCB had one. I mean, they're different. There's sort of, I know there's different avenues that you can go kind of in that sense, but UCB I liked in that you left the class with a full pilot. I
Right.
like in 8 weeks. And to me that seemed exciting and doable and so that's why I went that route. And also because it was comedy specific and I knew that I wanted to write something that was comedic.
Hmm.
And so came out of it definitely with a better understanding of sort of what a pilot is and how many pages each act should be, all that kind of technical stuff, but also just
Hmm.
being like, oh, I love this. It felt so natural. And I was like, I want to kind of chase this as well. So as I
Sorry
was,
to interrupt, but
yeah, please.
you start writing this pilot, and did you have an end goal in mind, or was it just kind of like, I really enjoy this and I want to see where it goes?
Yeah, it was more just like I like this. I'm gonna take the rules that I learn in this specific in this specific class and I'm going to apply it to the other pod that I'm working on with Jess basically.
Uh-huh.
And it was to kind of in furtherance of figuring out what we're gonna do with this other thing that
Was
I
your
was
wife
working
ever
on.
like, dude, focus?
Just pick a lane. And no, she was so cool about it, especially because it was like a side thing. It wasn't like, oh, the TV writing, honestly, and I'm sure we'll get more into it, but musical theater was definitely still my full-time focus, and TV writing kind of became this thing that I was sort of kind of obsessively chasing like on the side, but
Uh-huh.
I was still collaborating full-time with, my friend Kim, who I
Still
mentioned
writing
earlier.
musicals, still rapping at everybody's wedding.
Yeah, still doing all that kind of stuff. Exactly. Yeah, we were lucky enough to get some musical theater commissions. We worked on some fan songs for this video game called Genshin Impact, and those I think cumulatively are up to over like 25 million views on YouTube and stuff. So we
Wow.
were lucky enough to like be working on some stuff that was cool and that was getting out there. At the same time, I was like, oh, I would really. One thing that I loved about TV is it felt like if you can get in a writer's room, it felt like, oh, it's an actual nine to like you can have like a 9 to 5-ish kind of job, obviously depending on the room and depending on a lot of different factors. But I like that it felt
Nine
stable
to
in that
nine
way.
to 3 or 4 a.m. a lot of the time.
It
Yeah.
just depends on the
Mm.
room. Um, and so yeah, and so kind of I basically felt like while I was in New York, I was kind of lobbying, I felt like lobbying Hail Marys to LA to these as I started applying for fellowship programs and kind of writing more scripts, writing pilots, writing spec scripts, gathering materials, continuing to get better in that field, and then basically just waiting, feeling like it was kind of an impossible, facing impossible odds is sort of what it felt like to kind of get your foot in the door
Sorry,
in
I
LA.
keep interrupting, but
Sure.
I feel like we zoomed ahead. So
Yeah.
you're in New York, you're
hmm
writing musicals,
hmm
you're you know ordering coffees by rhyming with barista or whatever. Um, and you're also now writing television scripts.
Yeah.
How did you get to there are things I can do, I can send these to people in LA and get
hmm
involved in some kind of program that will foment my writing talent even more. If I can just
Yeah.
throw around the word foment, rhyme with that. Um,
Repent, relent. Yeah.
all right, you don't have to show off.
Let me pull up rhyming dictionary real
Yeah.
quick. Um, yeah, so luckily, like in that UCB class, so my very first writing teacher, I'll shout him out, Jeff Topolsky. He wrote on Brooklyn Nine-Nine. So funny, so cool. I think now he writes for Rockstar Games, but um he basically had a session at the very end where he kind of talked about the different opportunities that were out there. He was like, yeah, there are these writing fellowships where if you kind of get in them, like they basically just sort of help you break into Hollywood. And he talked about the different avenues, right? Like and also talked about how you could become a PA or showrunner's assistant, etc. And the one that felt most doable from New York were the writing programs. And so that's
Mhm.
where I focused my energy and and even now like Disney has one, Fox has one, NBC has one, and so I definitely encourage people who are kind of looking for a way to break in to apply, and the odds are long, and I knew that back then too, but like it's you never know unless you actually
So
apply.
there's a
So
number of them that are out there.
yeah, exactly.
And you
Yeah, and
also, I'm guessing you probably did not want to go home and go, honey, I'm no longer trying to take classes in this. I'm going to become a PA in
I
Los Angeles.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing is like it felt like such a big lift to move from
Right.
New York to LA and uproot again that unless it felt like there was something like really concrete, it just didn't make sense for my particular circumstance. And everyone's
Mm,
circumstances were different, but because I kind of made this pivot later on in my life, yeah, that's sort of what felt like the most doable version of it. And
right.
my wife and because we were I love LA and so I was like I was willing to move out here, but kind of the decision that we came to was like it didn't make sense unless there was something kind of more concrete, and that
Right.
felt like something that was concrete that we could do.
So you
Um,
decided to apply to all these programs. How many
mhm.
programs did you apply to?
That is a great question. Honestly, a
Thank
ton.
you.
So I definitely applied to I definitely applied to Disney. I applied to Warner Brothers, and this is not just like once. I applied multiple times to NBC. Honestly, in to NBC. Let's see. National Hispanic Media Coalition has one that I applied to as well, and so. Yeah, and for some, and obviously in Nickelodeon, and I applied multiple times to a couple of them. And I think what's kind of funny is like at one point I sort of was like, this is a lot to juggle writing musical theater and do TV, and I felt like my energy was being pulled in different directions, and luckily, sort of, I got. I found out I was in the semifinals for the NBC TV Writers Program, and that I was in semifinals for Nickelodeon sort of very soon after that. And it gave me sort of the resilience to be like, I need to, this is a
Keep
path that I need to
going.
keep pursue. Yeah, exactly. It's the little glimmers I feel like as a writer that just keep you kind of going in that direction.
Yeah.
And so that was sort of enough to keep me
I've been
writing.
looking for a glimmer for a while now, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, sometimes sometimes it can be rough for sure.
So how many scripts would you say
Mhm.
you had written before you started applying to these programs?
So each program is different,
Hmm.
and some of them, it's some of the programs are fading away. But the ones that are still out there, I think Paramount is the only one that I know of that still requires a spec script.
Hmm.
So a script of an existing TV show, writing it as if you are a writer on that show. And then they also require an original pilot. And then a lot of the other programs require two original pilots. And so that is sort of like the bare minimum that you can have to apply. And so I wrote two pilots, and then I think that's when I felt comfortable starting to apply to some of the programs. The next thing that I wrote was a spec script that I wrote in your class, Sean, and that I had such a positive experience. You were such a great teacher.
Keep
And I
going.
was,
Keep going.
yeah. I mean, I wholeheartedly endorse people taking Sean's class or to take coaching with Sean because
We're gonna have to cut this all out, but go ahead.
oh no, I 100% stand your classes.
So you had two pilots, then you
Yes.
wrote a spec script
Hmm.
and kept going after that, or we're done.
Yeah. No, it kept going. Honestly, my second pilot, I remember being like, oh, the first pilot felt so easy and natural. And it was because, and obviously it helped a ton that I had written. I mean, at that point, I'd been writing for several years full time as like a musical theater, doing
Uh-huh.
musical theater, right? So I'd done storytelling. So it wasn't like my first time doing dialogue and stuff. But the second pilot, I remember being like, I'm not as happy with this one, and I didn't feel as confident in it. And then so two pilots, a spec. And then I wrote another pilot. And then that one that one was typecast, and that was the one that I was most excited about. And that was the pilot where I felt like it was most from me, like most a story that only I could tell.
Hmm.
And I'm Bolivian American, and that was a story told from the standpoint of somebody who is Bolivian American and kind of like that world lens. It also felt like there was action to it, and just felt like the kind of thing where once you picked it up like you're like, oh, and this is so specifically my humor. I was like, this is my voice,
Right.
and so
And this
that is
was
where
this was really at least the fourth script you had written at that point.
that's right, yeah. And my third pilot, probably
Right.
fourth script.
Hmm.
And then I still kept writing though. It's like to stay on the treadmill of applying to the fellowships
Right.
and to apply to different things. And because even aside from the fellowships, there's the Austin Film Festival. I was like, that's a potential opportunity to kind of get your name out there. And if you place high enough, potential managers might pay attention. So I was applying to that as well. Yeah, so I think all in all, at this point, I probably have written five pilots, three specs,
Wow.
um, maybe six pilots actually.
And
Yeah.
do you think you can look at those either separately, pilots versus specs, or
Hmm.
all together and see a continuum of your writing getting better and better?
I'd like to think so. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd like to think so. I mean, it's interesting. I definitely feel my writing evolving, and also I've become pickier with myself, I think, kind of over time, and sort of and that a lot of it is also just from reading. I try to read as many scripts from shows that I really like as I possibly can. So the
Uh-huh.
writers who I really admire. So like one of the shows I loved was Mythic Quest, and so I wrote a Mythic Quest spec, and as I was doing that, I there's a if you just Google Mythic Quest script PDF, you can find a script from the beginning of season two, and it's just like really just getting to understand, oh, what are they doing that I really like, and just sort of taking my voice and sort of using some of those tricks and continuing to evolve. So yeah, I
I
know.
think a lot of people, yeah, I think that's really important because I think a lot of people go, well, I'm just going to write a script and it'll be great. And I
Mhm.
think there's a lot to learn, you know? It's very hard to just sit. Some people are great right off the bat, but I think there's a progression that people have to go through of like, let me learn the form, let me learn the compulsories, let me learn, and then I can do all the stuff that I'm capable of doing, you know?
Yes, totally. I totally. And I mean, I know I still have a ton. I know I still have a ton to learn. I'm still obviously still growing a ton as a writer, um, but yeah, and it's interesting because I also think, say I've written 6 pilots. Like this most recent one, I'm really excited about. I'm really happy with it. The one before it, I sort of feel like, oh, like I like aspects of it, but maybe it's not what I would use as a sample. And so it's interesting because so it's not like necessarily like all completely linear, like, oh, every script I write is like leaps and bounds better than the last
Right,
one. It's sort of you're like, okay, well, what don't I like about this? And then how can I use that to make the next script even better?
right.
So I think writing is always trial and error forever, but
Mine is mostly just error, not a lot of trial.
no
Um,
way.
which is makes it hard. So you submitted to a bunch of programs, and how long did
Mhm.
it take? Because you got into one eventually, but how long did that take?
Let's see. I mean, I would say so. I started applying to programs probably in 2022, and I think, I guess I was lucky enough. Maybe the next year, sort of like the second round of when I started doing applications, when kind of I was like, I don't know, maybe this is too much. But I heard that I was a semifinalist in the NBC TV Writers Program, and kind of like went through that process, and pretty soon after that found out I was a semifinalist in Nickelodeon for their writing program as well. And so that was maybe that was 2023 2024 when that was happening.
So you were a
And
semifinalist in two different programs, which
yes,
is
that's right.
basically the equivalent of being a finalist when you add those two things together, right?
That's right. Yeah, 100%. I'll take that for sure.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's funny. Well, and that year for Nickelodeon, I made it to the finals, and there were 7 writers in the finals, and they were going to take 3 people to the program. And when I didn't get it, I was sort of was like, oh, that was my shot. I was like, that was kind of like my moonshot, like chance and my opportunity. And again, like I almost was just like, I just maybe it's not meant to be, but I just kept writing and wound up finding my like lucky enough to finding myself in the same kind of position the next year, and luckily was able to get it the
With
following year.
Nickelodeon again.
Yes, with Nickelodeon.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, to get in the same position and kind of go through the interview gauntlet that they throw at you, and was able to get into the Nick
Well,
writing
let's
program.
talk about that a little bit because we've talked about scripts and you had to submit a spec script and a pilot for Nickelodeon,
Hmm.
right?
That's right.
And you had a bunch. Is there a particular way you decided on which ones you were going to submit, or was it just like these are my best, or was there a strategy to it?
Yeah, so I knew that I wanted to submit something different. And so that's part of the reason why I kind of call it like you're on this writing treadmill, because I think it's really discouraged to apply with the same scripts. So it's not like you can just apply to the same program every year. I mean, I guess you could, but I think some of them explicitly say not to. And I think, if it didn't work the first time, maybe try something different the next. And so that was part of the rationale. But also for spec scripts, I think these days, even shows that are episodic are more serialized than they used to be. There's more change
Yeah.
season to season. And so for your spec to feel current, you kind of have to be current on the show. And
Bob, he
so
submitted his Caroline in the City again. Do you
that's
want to
right.
read this?
Yeah, exactly. And so
Uh,
it's gotta be fresh. And yeah, and so the year before the year before was when I submitted my Mythic Quest spec to Nickelodeon. So the year that I got in, I submitted a ghost spec, and so really dove deep into ghosts. And again, this is Sean was essential to the development of the
And
ghost
that
script
was
as
one that we
well.
worked on just ourselves, right?
Yeah, it was a one-on-one coaching
Uh, uh,
session. And yeah, absolutely love the process. Love the process of getting to know that show. Like really fell in love with the show and the characters' voices and yeah, and it's even studying I was taking notes on the structure, like how many scenes are in every act, and how sort of they balance A story and B story, and kind of did that for multiple episodes. Yeah, and then and so I had my ghost script that felt very current. It was and basically at the end of the most recent season that I'd watched. And then I was like, I need to come up with a new pilot sample that Nick hasn't seen. At that point, they'd seen two other samples, and so quickly, kind of put together another pilot, developed it into to as good of a shape as I could get it in, and then applied with those two samples to Nick.
okay, so you got those samples in. What else is involved in the process of getting into this program?
And this is all with the caveat, like hopefully, I mean, so I think the future of the program is a little bit unclear right now.
Nick is up in the
With
air.
Nick's up in the air. I think with the Skydance merger and everything, all the alumni of the program like
Fucking Larry
really,
Ellison, that motherfucker.
all the alumni really hope that they keep the program alive, that they bring it back, because it was incredible. It was awesome. But yeah, but as far as that particular program, and I think this is generally true
Yeah,
across all of
yeah. I'm
them,
sure there's like particulars that are
versions of
different,
it.
but
Yes. There's like a personal statement, personal essay kind of portion where basically the essence of most of these is something along the lines of tell me your story.
mhm,
And so that is one of the things that I think Nick has done really well, and this whole process of applying these fellowships have done very well is how can you talk about yourself, talk about your story, like how does it inform your writing? What are the themes that you write about, and how is that informed by your lived experiences?
right.
And also, if you're a comedy writer, you got to make it funny. Like, how do you mine comedy from that?
That is the
Um,
struggle I have is I can write words, but how do I make them funny? That's always hard, you know?
I mean, that is the definition of writing comedy. But
Hmm.
yeah, so it's like they're like, okay, well, even if you're telling your story, like, where's the funny in your story, and how can you bring that to your writing?
Did you not hear
And
the part where I said I was rapping at a law firm?
yeah, that definitely got a mention. That's for sure. That's for sure. But yeah, and so that's like a big portion of it. That's honestly, I would say probably the biggest portion. Is there some essay along those lines? There might be other kind of smaller essay questions
Hmm.
that you'll have in each individual program that might differ a little bit as well. They might want some kind of understanding that you're familiar with their programming and that you're interested in it in some way. Like I want to say the Disney one usually has a question that's like, if you were
Who's
to
who's
write
your
for
favorite dwarf?
right, and why,
Hmm.
1,000 words minimum. Um, they will like it's like what show on any of our networks
Right.
across the Disney family would you write for, and why do you think your voice is a good fit for it?
Hmm.
Something like that. But yeah, and so you have your scripts, you have sort of your essays and other kind of smaller, kind of like smaller short responses. And then if you're lucky enough to kind of get to a semifinalist phase, that's where you start having interviews.
Uh-huh.
And then from that, obviously, naturally, you go to the finalist phase, and it's more interviews.
So tell us about the interview stuff. What's that
hmm
like?
Yeah, so the interview, definitely nerve-wracking. And again, I think that there's a series of questions that you are going to field, and I think you'll see a lot of the same questions across the different programs. The most important thing is when somebody goes, tell me your story, that you're able to talk about it, and that you kind of don't stumble, that it shows that you're comfortable talking about yourself and
Hmm.
what you write about and why, and also have like a short form version of it. So if you can talk about it in like a minute and a half or 2 minutes, I would say that's what you're probably shooting for, kind of on the long end.
Mine
But
is mine
and
is like 4 hours. It's like a mini series. So
okay, well that's great. I'd watch that miniseries for sure.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so you just need to like that, I would say is something you're always going to get in any setting and just sort of have that rehearsed, but you also have to sound kind of natural. It can't sound too practiced. That's the tricky part.
And funny, right? You have to be funny in those moments. Or
Yeah, I
maybe
think so.
not. Maybe not. It's not. Are you applying specifically for comedy stuff or is it?
Yeah.
Oh, you are.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, generally, so Nick was just comedy. If you're applying to Disney, it's either comedy or drama. And so it's like sort of if you're applying for the comedy track, I think you do want to cross as kind of want to come across as being funny. You also
Mhm.
want to come across as being like cool, like in the sense that like not cool as in
Sunglasses, just
yeah.
sunglasses.
No, you don't want to show up in Ray-Bans. You don't necessarily like need to win. Like you don't have to be like Mr. Popular, but like just in the sense of oh, like I would want to spend 8 hours a day in a writer's room
Right.
like with this person. Like
Right.
that is essentially what they're asking themselves. So it's like
Mhm.
the more authentic, which it sounds so cheesy and cliche, but just like the more comfortable and authentic and like yourself that you can kind of be, I think the better. And so,
Assuming you're
um,
not an asshole.
yeah, if that's the case, then hide your true colors
Right.
until for as long as you possibly can.
Right.
But there's also like a whole slew of questions that you'll see kind of again and again. People love to ask what you're watching. It's like, oh, what are you watching on TV? Because I think it shows your voice, your interests, like what kind of things inform your taste, what kind of things inform your writing. People might ask which writers do you sort of look up to, like whose style do you really emulate? And so it's helpful to have some showrunners who like who shows you know and that
Shakespeare.
they love. Shakespeare. It's tough to argue.
Mhm.
Tough to argue with
Comedy
Shakespeare, I
and
think.
tragedy.
Right. The man's got it all.
So how? So are the
Mhm.
way you're describing it? It sounds like you have to interview with a bunch of different people, many of whom might ask you the same things.
And it's sort of I think every program is probably different, but I do know that NBC, at Nick, and from what I've heard at Disney, it's similar at the semifinal phase. You're sort of talking to one person, or maybe like a couple of people,
Uh-huh.
and it's maybe a longer, maybe like half hour kind of more in-depth type interview where you get to know this one person, like often the program like manager a program coordinator, and they're vetting who are going to be their finalists.
Right.
And then I want to say at the finalist phase, you start meeting with like different groups of people, or the sort of the pool expands of the people that you're meeting. And so and in Nick, it was particularly intense. It was like 2 full days of interviews basically on Zoom, and you would go into, and they would sort of drop you into a Zoom room full of Nick, like people who wrote for Nick or worked at Nick in some capacity, animators, and basically anyone in this room full of 8 to 20 people could ask you like whatever question, and so it's sort of you were sort of like playing hot potato. So that was a very different type of structure
Right.
than for example the semifinal where it feels more just like an extended conversation where they're kind of getting to know you. And I would also say in those types of interviews, like take the like if someone wants to go on a tangent and someone's like, oh, like you love ghosts, oh, like that's my favorite show ever, and like if they want to spend 10 minutes talking about that, you just want to like be normal and like have a cool like conversation and kind of run with that. And
That's what I've
so
been trying to do my whole life. It's not working out that great, but
I think you're a fantastic conversationalist,
I
Sean.
appreciate that. I appreciate
Yeah.
that, Marcus.
Um, so
So yeah,
yes, I
that
think
sounds like that sounds pretty, I don't know. It feels like it could be a little grueling at times when you're self-aware but trying not to be the whole time, you know?
yeah, I think yeah, it can be grueling and you can psych yourself out a little bit. But I think if it helps to practice before too. And one thing that I will say is before you kind of go into those interviews, you're going to get a lot of questions, I would say, about, in Nick, there was a lot of technical questions. And I don't necessarily know that was the case like in every scenario, but someone might be like, what's your writing process? Like, what's your daily writing schedule? What do you think makes an iconic character? What type of themes do you typically like write about? And so I think it's just helpful just sort of take stock of all that stuff and not get
Mhm.
caught off guard because some of it's like, oh, well, I write whenever I have free time. It's sort of is to just be kind of intentional thinking about that kind of stuff.
Right.
And like how do I think about character and how do I think about like what's important to me and structure? Like those kind of like really specific questions that you might get that like you obviously know because everyone, everyone who's listening to this podcast is a writer, but it's helpful sort of just have it top of mind
You hear that,
going into
Mom?
that.
Start writing some things down.
Yeah, that's right. If she's applying to a fellowship, she should.
Disney. Her favorite dwarf is Doc. Uh, so eventually you've got all your applications done. What's the timeline after that?
Yeah, that's also, let's see. So I want to say for Nick, the application was due. I mean, each of the like, so if someone's interested in the fellowships, you should definitely look them up. You should look up all the application deadlines. They're all different. Especially I think now that the landscape is kind of crazy. I don't know exactly what schedule they're on. But Nick was due at the end of the calendar year. I think they extended it because that particular year it was literally December 31st. And I want to say that I found out that I advanced to semifinals maybe in mid-March or something like
So
that.
it's a
And
while.
it's a while, yeah. And the best thing that you can do is just apply and then forget that you applied and then just live your life. And then, it's no fun to just sort of be checking like Reddit and to be like, oh, what are does anyone heard anything? Like it's not gonna, it's easier said than done. But, obviously like it can linger in the back of your mind.
Right.
But yeah, so it takes a while to hear back. I would say from most of these. Yeah, like I want to say the NBC one, I want to say I applied in March and maybe I didn't hear anything until like September of that year
Wow.
or something. I could be wrong, but I think it takes a while and every program is on its different
Right.
timeline.
And okay, so you get in and now you're starting. Tell me what that was like. Did you immediately go to a show? Was there classroom stuff? Was there Zoom meetings with animators? How did that work?
Yeah, so that particular program, so it was, again, this is a situation where I'm sure caveat, all of them are different. Each of them
Right.
is structured differently. I would say
Nothing I like more than a good caveat, definitely.
the Nick and Disney programs are different in the sense that they pay you to be part of that fellowship program, which is pretty awesome. You're basically getting paid to become a better writer and also to make connections like within like that studio, which is incredible and feels so unique. And so, went into the Nick program. I'll just shout out my two other participants, so Teddy Sevilla and Disha Minocha, both such talented, funny writers. So the three of us kind of went in the program. Initially, there's sort of like a boot camp, a writing boot camp that goes over some of the basics, stuff, kind of basic character story stuff for a little bit. Um, and then we went into like a mock writers room session where they brought in an alum who's like a really fantastic storyteller. He'd written on different shows, including Modern Family. His name is Samir Gardezi. And that was a really positive experience. So we basically took a week and broke an episode of an old Nick show called Big Nate, and literally went like straight from blue skying ideas for an episode to having a full 9-page outline that Teddy Disha and I all like worked on together
In a
uh,
week.
in a week.
Mhm.
Yeah, exactly. And that was great. It's basically like
And
this
that
is
was
what
a
it's
show that
like.
was no longer on the air or
Yes,
yeah.
that's right. Yeah, and I
So
think
it
it
was
was
just a
just
practice thing. It was just like this is how the
Mhm.
process works.
Exactly. And it was mostly
Great.
to teach us about all that kind of stuff. And it was great. And it was like, and it was so fun. And you get the energy of being in a writer's room. And we still kind of there, like, it is funny because so Samir was acting sort of as the showrunner in the sense he would come in and be like, he's like, actually, something about the story isn't quite clicking, and so then we had to deconstruct, come up with new beats, and then do rewrites. And he was like, this is what happens in an actual show, and just that kind of stuff was super valuable.
Right.
And that was, that experience was a blast, and so like that kind of stuff all happened up towards the first part of the program. There was this kind of like boot camp kind of component of the program that was great and helpful. Um,
Did they ever do the thing where they're like, choke yourself? Not
no,
with
I can't.
your hand, with my hand, like the Full Metal Jacket kind of boot camp.
No, I can't say that I'm familiar enough with that to
Oh, it's
even
great.
pretend
It's
to.
really great.
No, so there we didn't do much choking,
Hmm.
minimal choking, I think.
Good on you.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean it was fun. They even brought in like snacks. They're like, yeah, this is, to make it feel like a real writer's room and stuff. So
Gotta love snacks, no doubt
it
about
was
that.
cool. It
Yeah.
was fun. And then yeah, they had us do improv. So we actually did an improv class through UCB. Like we did a 101. None of us had any kind of like extensive improv background before, but just for being in a writer's room, just being able to kind of pitch, to be present, like it was helpful to kind of just to hone those skills a little bit and to
Uh-huh.
be in that environment. So that was great. They brought in another alum of the program. His name is Dwayne Colbert, and he taught a sketch workshop. And that was also really helpful. That was really fun. We're kind of like punching up each other's work throughout all this process and stuff.
And is it just the three of you the whole time?
Yeah, it's just the three of us. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
kind of going through this specific program. And then, well, I will say improv was actually an actual UCB class. So it was the
So there
three
was
of
a bunch of
us.
people. Yeah.
Yeah, it was really, I mean, that was really fun. It was a blast. We had a great time doing that together, but also in the context of a bigger class.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, and then a big part of the program was, we came in with a spec script and the pilot that we had applied with, and we worked with a script consultant, and her name was Karen Kirkland. And she was also great, but she helped us kind of hone these scripts and get them in basically in a form where it's like if you want to use it as a sample, you're able to. And so actually kind of the Ghost script that I went in with, I worked with Karen and like really got that in a place where I was like, oh yeah, like this thing just like feels really solid. And similarly with the other pod that I'd applied with, kind of honing that till it's in a in really good shape as well. And so
Did you
that
feel
takes
like
up.
she contradicted a lot of the things I said when we worked on that stuff?
No, absolutely not. Yeah, absolutely not. It was all
Give me her
complimentary.
name
Like
again. I'd like to.
no, it was fantastic. Yeah, it just like there was a couple of little things that just like some polishes
Yeah.
that it was just like, oh yeah, this takes it from being like a sample that I'm like really happy with to one that I'm like, oh, like I love it even more.
Right.
And so she was really fantastic in that way. But that is a big component of the program is getting your work it's like sample ready. And that's also because, within the program kind of manager is no longer there. Her name was Kate Blatchford. But she was an amazing advocate, really just really fantastic at her job. But also like an amazing advocate for us. And so she would take these samples, and if she knew that somebody was staffing, would be like, hey, like this person is staffing ready. Here is their sample, kind of acting as our agent and manager, like in the context of Nickelodeon and the larger Paramount framework.
Right.
Yeah, so that was a big part of the program as well. In addition to just setting up sort of generals with past alumni and other people at the studio just to and kind of increase the, our networking and contacts, which is also super valuable.
Right. So, how long does that part of the program go on?
So that program could last up to a full year,
Uh-huh.
unless you staff earlier. And I was fortunate enough to staff in June. So I basically kind of did the typical course of the program for 6 months, and then wound up staffing in mid to late June on Hollywood Arts, um, with the sample that I had polished in the program.
So tell me what that was like when you were working on Hollywood Arts. You go in, it's your first day. People are like, "Oh, here comes the guy from the program."
Yeah, I mean, Hollywood Arts was an awesome experience, and everyone in the room was so funny and so smart. I learned a ton from them. Definitely, like we kind of hit the ground running because literally the very first day. So there's a couple of things that felt a little bit different. So it was a Zoom room for the first week, and then we transitioned to being in person. But also it was a form of writing that I hadn't done before. It was group writing, and or some people call it like gang writing, but basic.
There used to be a different term for that, which you're not allowed to use anymore. Go
Oh,
ahead.
really? Okay. Well, but so this is basically on like a comedy show where um everybody is basically you start with you open up a final draft document, it's blank, and you start like pitching what the different line like each line basically people anyone could pitch what the next character line is going to be. And actually, this really is kind of the process from the time that you're doing a beat sheet. Like you kind of open up the beat sheet and people are pitching ideas. You go from that to the outline. People are writing the outline together. Essentially, everyone's kind of pitching what they think the next thing in the outline should be. And then when you go to script, it's literally line by line character dialogue. People pitching what they think the next line of dialogue is going to be. And
My
as
immediate reaction is that sounds very difficult.
It was, I mean, to be totally honest, yeah, it was very tricky for me starting off like in that room, like on day one, basically being like, hey, we have this outline and we're going to script on it and we're writing the script as a group. And the group couldn't have been nicer, more supportive, funnier, great the entire time. But it definitely, that was a learning process, sort of getting used to that style of writing. And it was
Yeah.
very different from all the other, I at this point now I started writing, I've been writing musicals for a long time. I've been telling stories for a long time, collaborated in a lot of different ways, and I'd never experienced anything quite like that. And so, yeah, so it was an absolute learning curve for sure. But, in some ways,
Sorry, I feel
sure.
like there's been a few occasions, I think, where, and I guess some of them were in writers' rooms and some of them when I was working just one on one with people on pilots,
Hmm.
where it's gotten to that point where it's like, okay, let's write this together. And I feel like
Yeah.
every time I've done that, I have said, hold on, let me go write a version of this and then we can come back together and work on it, work on fixing it together. Like, let's get a foundation down. That's why I say it sounds very difficult, because if you're just kind of going from we don't have anything, what comes next? I mean, I guess you have an outline, but like,
Hmm.
who says the next thing? Bob. And what does Bob say? He says, I like potatoes. No, I like like it just feels tricky, you know?
I mean, it is definitely it's a related skill set, but it almost is a different type of skill set. I mean, but at the same time, I think some of the most successful multicam shows ever have been group written.
Right.
So like one of the showrunners on the show, Jake Farrow, he started as a writer's assistant on Friends, and that's how they wrote on Friends, is like they wrote every episode of Friends as group writing.
That's why that
And
show sucked.
yeah, maybe one day it'll get a little bit of traction
Yeah,
at some
yeah.
point. But yeah, and so I think that there is like a school of writing where like this is kind of the way that some people do it. And I think it was super valuable for me to have my first room be like that because it definitely has synapses firing in a totally different way.
Right.
And at the same time, like yeah, like I still love being behind a laptop and being able to craft this, like writing a pilot, is still very fun. Kind of doing it, kind of whenever you're kind of in control. It's the easiest way to get your sort of voice across, your specific, unique voice across, even whenever you're using, pre-existing characters. But I think people are going to be happy with the show. It's really fun. The people in there are so funny. And so it was definitely a fantastic experience, but challenging in that regard. Like
Yeah.
honestly didn't know group writing was a thing
Right.
until pretty much I got there, and so yeah, learning how to do it was, um, a really great experience.
Yeah. That's cool. Now, was there like, okay, two more questions about the room. Number
Hmm.
one, was there anybody in the room who had sort of a, I feel like, I don't know how to say this diplomatically, but your journey was very, I think, unusual to get to a writer's room like that on that show. Were
Hmm.
there other people in the room who had that kind of, not, not necessarily I was a lawyer and then I wrote musicals and now I'm writing this TV show, but were there other people with unusual experiences writing in the room with you? What was that like?
Yeah, I think that's the case. I mean, definitely, I think one thing that I've found is everyone, I mean, this is maybe the most obvious statement ever, but everybody's journey is different, right? But like,
No,
I
that's not true. No.
But I know there's at least one other writer, Hannah Surya in the room who is a Nick Writing Program alum, and so it's sort of great to have somebody who's been like, oh, like I know the program that you came from, like, and just sort of we had that kind of connection. She was like, oh yeah, like if you have any questions, you can direct them like towards me. But I think yeah, some of the value of any room is just having people that have had like really different experiences. You can and everyone can kind of bring those to the show. I will say a big portion of the room had written together on other Nickelodeon projects, kind of in that same kind of like group writing setting. Um, yeah, so I know the showrunners. I mentioned Jake earlier. Sam Martin, Samantha Martin was the other showrunner on the show, and a lot of the team they put together they'd worked with before.
Mhm.
And so yeah, so the showrunners were hilarious. Everyone they brought was funny in their own kind of their own specific way with their own unique experiences that they brought to the
Right.
table. But they had, I would say a lot of them had been writing together for the better part of a decade.
Wow. That's, at least in my experience, that's unusual.
Hmm.
So that's cool that they knew each other that well. Here's my other question about the room. How involved was the program during that time? Was there support at all, or was it just like, okay, you got a job, good luck? Which
Yeah.
I'm not shading that. So, it feels like
No,
that's
yeah.
okay, but what?
That's kind of like the point of the program. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's kind of to be like, hey, this was the thing.
right,
And yeah, it was more the latter. It's basically like you were done with the program,
right,
like go forth. And I mean, and I don't think this is anything like untoward, but like, or like, I'm not supposed to share this, but yeah, I mean, the programs, I think a lot of these programs, if most of them, if not most of them, um, they help basically pay for your salary, and like that is one of the things that makes you appealing to hire. That's one of the ways
right.
they incentivize shows to hire you if it's a show within that network. And so to the show it's like, oh, this writer is free or heavily discounted, or I don't know how it works in every fellowship program. So that is like a huge benefit that the Nick program was giving me, and sort of and like made me appealing to hire as for the show. But aside from that, um, yeah, I think, if I had any questions, I could definitely go to the program coordinator and, Kate, and now I think the Cynthia Mendez is running things over there, but like they were always great. They would answer any question, but it was mostly I was a staff writer on
Right.
Hollywood Arts,
It's
and that
like your
was
your training wheels are gone. Now go forth into the Tour de France and good luck, basically.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And so that was my experience there. And sort of leaning on other, friends that you make in the room and, try
Right.
and ask them questions if, that kind of thing. But yeah, the program's involvement was then done.
Well, let me follow up on that and just ask you, in your experience, what makes somebody good to work with or somebody you can rely on in the room? You know?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's somebody who I think that's somebody who honestly, like, so Hannah is somebody that I will specifically shout out because she is like I think someone who's like a generous laugher, like in the room, like whenever you're pitching jokes, it's a pretty vulnerable thing. And
Yeah.
so, and I think the room in general was very good about this. They were a very generous room. Like if you made a joke that was funny, like people laugh. It's not like, I've heard stories about people who sort of was
Totally
like,
true. Yes.
yeah, it's like being
Sorry, I cut you
withholding.
off, but I know what you're going to say. Go ahead.
No, I mean, I'm sure you could even like, you could shine more light on it than even I could. But yeah, it's like you want people whenever you do a pitch, like to not, you don't want it to feel competitive. You want people to support, and you want to support and like yes and other people's ideas versus just going to shoot them down. And this was a room that was really good about supporting like supporting each other and each other's jokes and finding kind of ways to like punch up jokes and punch up the story in a way that felt like constructive. And so I think, that's what you want. And as an early writer, as somebody who's like new to the room, just having someone who cares enough to sort of to learn about you and to ask to kind of make you feel welcome. Is important. And the showrunners were great about that as well.
Hmm.
And I think that sort of attitude trickles down. And so that's great too.
You don't want to be the person who's pitching a joke and then somebody goes, which I've been in this room. You pitch a joke and somebody goes, "What?"
Yeah,
No,
right.
because
Yeah,
that
and
just
then
shuts people down, you know?
yeah, you're not gonna get the best. You're not gonna get the best out of people, I think, if that's the vibe. Because it is vulnerable, especially in a group writing room where it's literally like, this is my pitch based off, it's essentially improv, right? Like in the moment, you're like, it's not like you've had time to review the script the night before and show up with your list of like jokes
Right.
specific to that this joke spot. Um, and so yeah, you need to have sort of that yes and like supportive vibe.
Right.
And I think like honestly, I don't think that benefits anybody. If somebody is like, I'm not going to laugh at this person's joke because I don't want to seem like they're doing well at my expense, which is a crazy thing. You're trying to make a show together, but also if you're laughing at other people's jokes, people are gonna be like, hey, this is a great person to have in the room. This person builds other people up. And I think that's something that is really important to remember and something that like, that I definitely want to take with me going forward as well.
And there are definitely those people who are like, I'm not laughing at this guy's jokes because I don't want him to succeed, you know?
Yeah. You hear some crazy stories. Yeah.
And when I say that, I'm saying that because that's what I do. I do not laugh at anyone's jokes except my own. Not interested. Not interested. I do what I do is when somebody pitches a joke, I go, nope, just to make sure
Just to
everybody knows.
really
Yeah,
nail the
yeah.
coffin. That's great.
Swing and a miss. Try
Yeah.
again. Try again.
Yeah.
Okay, just a couple more things.
Hmm.
One thing is, and I this is the question that every writer dreads. I certainly dread it when people say it to me.
Yeah.
Although people don't really say it to me anymore. But you know, what happens now? Like, what do you see going on going forward? Is your show coming back? What all those things? You know?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so what's going on now? So, I don't think there's like official word on season 2 yet. It's in as
Season
far
one
as
has not come out yet. Is that correct?
no, that's right. I think it comes out like in summer of
Okay.
this year. I'm not sure there's an actual release date yet for it. And then yeah, I think as far as like right now, was sort of fortunate enough to find a manager. And so I'm working with my manager. Like she just recently, it's like the process of kind of setting up generals, kind of going through that process, just getting introduced to the industry since I really like that process hasn't happened yet, given that I kind of was in the Nick writing program, went straight from that to staffing, which is sort of kind of which is a really lucky pipeline to be in. But so now it's kind of going out and meeting other folks like in the industry.
Hmm.
And yeah, and sort of just continuing to write, that is sort of the treadmill that I've put myself on is writing pilots. And so yeah, so earlier today I was putting the finishing touches on my next pilot, potentially writing a feature this year. I've never done that before, but I sort of was like, okay, well, I have this whole slew of pilots that I really like and I'm proud of and I feel comfortable sharing. And so like what is kind of something new, a new way for me to expand my skill set. And
Right.
so doing that because yeah, I mean, I definitely have heard like industry has had there have been hotter times in the industry than right now. And so uh, you
I
know
appreciate the understatement. Yeah.
yeah, so it's just kind of staying writing and doing everything that you can that's in your control. That is kind of my sort of my philosophy right now.
Great. Let's pretend that I gave you, I don't know if this is this might be a real thing. a
Hmm.
time traveling phone. In other words, a phone you can use to call into the past.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm not sure, but I feel like that might be a real thing. But
Yeah.
suppose you call your law firm
Yeah.
from, I don't know what, 10 years ago or whenever it was when you were still there and
Yeah.
working. Uh, what do you say to yourself 10 years ago or whenever about what's ahead? What do you, how do you describe things to yourself?
Just buckle up because it's going to be one hell of a ride, I think.
Mm,
Yeah, I mean, it's the whole thing has been kind of crazy. When I look back at the journey that I've been on, that my awesome wife Laurel has like been on with me and been so supportive of like every step of the way. It's pretty crazy. And there's sometimes um, where I sort of wish I'm like, oh, I love TV writing. I wish this is something that I knew that I wanted to do, like going into college, right? And sort of
right,
have been on this path. But at the same time, it's, things happen the way they do, and like you can like all of those experiences I had in like doing law and move and living in New York and doing musical theater, all that is like story fuel. It's like stuff that kind of gives me my unique perspective, and
right.
that specific journey that I've been on like happened the way it did and has made me the storyteller that I am like right now. And so it's like in that way, like it just kind of is what it is. And being grateful for the experiences that I've had and that I've been able to kind of like make the pivots that I have. Because I know that it's a pretty unique, crazy path that I've been on, but I'm very grateful that I've been able to do it. Um,
You, by the way, are at the other end of this call, so you were just talking to yourself, and at the other end, you were going like this.
yeah, it's like, oh my God, I get it. Just let me
uh,
live.
all right, last thing, and this is kind
Hmm.
of, I mean, you kind of have already answered this, but I'm going to ask you to answer it again. What if I said, what's the most important piece of advice you would give to somebody who wants to follow a similar path? What would that advice be?
That is it's another fantastic question, Sean. You're getting good at this. I can tell you've done a few of them
I've
now.
done a few.
Um, a single piece of advice. I think it's just um I don't know if this is advice so much as um this is like I don't know if this is helpful or not, but it sort of is like you have to have two minds, like whenever you're doing it. Like you have to have kind of like one mind where you're being very rational and you're like sort of like I know like this feels kind of crazy that I'm doing this. And it feels kind of like I'm like writing five pilots and three specs or whatever, or six pilots and three specs. You're like you don't
for
know
for
what
for
like
the
how
possibility of nothing. Like it's
for the
you're
possible.
you're
Yeah.
fabricating this stuff without any guarantee that it's going to be anything.
Right. And so you have to kind of have the understanding like this may be nothing. Um, and so that's one mindset, and just sort of understanding the reality of it. And then having the other mindset where you're like, I'm delusional enough to feel like I can do it. And if nothing else, like I love doing this thing. And if you love it enough and you like the work that you're generating and it brings you joy, like throw yourself into it and just lean all the way into it. And like you kind of don't know the way that things are gonna shake out. Because the funny thing is like my whole path that I've been on, like I think one version of me would think like this was the end of the journey and I'm like a TV writer. It's like honestly just the very it's like the very beginning of it for me,
Yeah,
right? It's like now I'm kind of in a position where it's like, yeah, I'm talking to my manager and trying to figure out what the next thing is gonna be. And so
it's
like
like
I
a
don't think
yacht
it's
race where you go back and forth at the starting line until they shoot the
yeah.
gun and then you're off. But there's all this stuff that has to happen before you even get to the starting line. It's like
Yes.
you know how like a yacht race is. Like I've done that.
I'm impressed that you know the mechanics of a yacht race, to be honest
Yeah,
with
I
you.
am too. I don't know how I know that, but it's
But
funny.
yeah, you just have to really love it and really lean all the way into it if that's what you want to do. It's like the whenever I was And so sorry. I know this is kind of going on, but like the
No, no,
whenever
no,
I was
please. This is very inspiring, and I'm not kidding. This is really great to hear.
great. Well, whenever I was leaving my law firm, or I was at NYU talking to the guy at the admissions office there, um, and basically, so I'm there with my with my very serious girlfriend, and we're kind of like sitting in at the time, and
This is
we're
not your
sitting.
wife. This is your serious girlfriend,
No,
right?
no, this is my wife, serious girlfriend at the time.
Uh-huh.
But we were sitting there in this guy's office, and we're like, "Oh, so what is kind of the deal with this program?" And like, and what would you say to if you're in if you're in my position? He was like, basically, he was like, I would say, he's like, I always tell people like you should only write and like and pursue musical in this context musical theater if you can't imagine yourself doing anything else. And so that's like that is the journey that I decided to go on because it was like this is what I really really want to do,
Hmm.
and I know it feels kind of crazy, but I at this stage I can't imagine doing anything else. And so at that junction, that was sort of like my inflection point. But yeah, yeah, just throw yourself into it, I would say, if you really love it enough.
Folks, I think we're going to leave it there. This is Marcus Perkins Bejarano. Marcus, do you have any social media stuff you want to plug or anything like that?
Uh,
Your
to be
Twitter
honest, not.
feed, you love to go on Twitter and say very right-wing things, right?
Oh,
Isn't that
good.
your
You found my account.
Yeah,
Good.
yeah.
No, I mean honestly, if like people want to message me, they can like, I have a website where it has some of my musical theater stuff on there. You can just like Google my name and it'll come up. And so if anyone needs to get a hold of me or something, they can do it that way. I mean, I do have an Instagram, but it's pretty chill. I'm not super active on there. So, but yeah, I mean, people should feel free to reach out if they have questions or
Great.
anything.
Really, really good to know. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here, Marcus. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. You are in Los Angeles, where it is a balmy whatever degrees. I'm in New York. It is about 8 here right now and going down. And it's been this way for a month and a half, which is so frustrating. So, everybody, listen to me, like and subscribe to this podcast, Punching Up with me. I also have a newsletter that I put out fairly regularly that has some writing tips in it and also has some just very self-indulgent stories about things that have really happened to me. So you can go to seanconroy.com and sign up for that newsletter. My most recent story was about the time I got beaten up by the police. So it was it was intense. That's it. We'll see you next time on Punching Up. Thanks, everybody.